Very good. Let's get started, and a warm welcome, everybody, and especially to you, Jonas. So nice to be in touch again with you. And we are going to be, I think, a small group today. As I mentioned, the vacations is getting started, and I think it's good because we're going to be able to really have an intimate conversation. And how I know you, Jonas, I knew you. I think I knew you a lot, but as mostly as a business strategy when we met over 20 years ago, and now especially through the podcasts, I could see that at that time a lot was cooking already in your head and beyond business strategy. So I hope later on you're going to be able to present your journey, and I think it's fascinating, especially this flash of insight that you had when you met Oren Lyon, right?
Yes.
And which I learned is head of Indigenous nation in the US, right?
Yes.
And yes, and it was an important moment for you, I think, and also for everything that we now have as a result of your work. The 4Ds stand for dreamers, doers, designers, and doubters, and especially the doubters we love because it gets the discussions exciting also because I think if we have a conviction, the doubters help us either to pivot or to have even more conviction in our thoughts. And I think we have a magnitude of things to discuss. This meeting is about a conversation. We are few in this call today, so it's about us here and about the conversation questions. We have still two hosts, and it's Peter Sandberg that will lead the moderation and the conversations. Casimiro helping me as well to look into the chat. Anytime we can pose questions in the chat. And the meeting is being recorded already because we are collecting all the 4Ds, and soon we're going to create a YouTube channel and have it in the public domain. If you are able, if you don't have the issues like you're having, Cecilia, with the cameras, have your cameras on. I think it would be good. Did I miss anything, Peter?
No, thank you for the great introduction. And of course, this is the third part in what we plan to be like evergreen series of conversations, hopefully, depending on the longevity research for many 100 years to come. So that's the ambition. And Jonas, a warm welcome, and thank you for being able and wanting to join us, even though today there's not that many of us. I have only spoken a little bit with you earlier, and but I was struck by the path, the arc of your life journey, and your purpose. That it seems to me, at least, that I don't think you discovered that, but that you found already back at your time at Ericsson, and your path going from being part of a big corporation and now basically more focused on trying to make the world better, and especially the environment. And you have done that through in many various ways, but you have done that through a specific mechanism called Ecocide that I hope that we'll be able to take a closer look at and hear more from you how that came about. So please, Jonas, you have had a long and interesting life, and the time here is unfortunately not enough to make it all justice. But I'm sure you'll be able to give us at least some context and set the spotlight on certain areas and topics that you feel are important to you.
Thank you, Peter, and everyone. I'm very honored to be here. I'm so honored that I kind of had a problem even to say to my wife's family what I was about to do today. I'm very honored. Oh, almost embarrassed. No, it's thank you. And we had a very good pre-conversation a few weeks ago to this, and there were a few things that I took with me from it. And when I was thinking now about how to start, I think so. One question that is quite interesting is, what is the key problem? If there's Einstein said that if your life depends on you fixing something, you should spend, and you have an hour, you should spend 55 minutes to figure out what is the key problem, and then 5 minutes is all you need to fix it. So, and I know that all of you have listened and read and are quite concerned about the state of affairs. And I think that is a very good question, but there's another question that is more important, I think, and that is question I'll give to you before I start, and that is, what is it that you are so passionate about, so that you could spend tens of years of your life to save it? No, what would be so valuable for you that you're so in love with or so passionate about, so that you would give your life to it? And for me, I grew up a big important part of my childhood in the forest, basically, very far from those in school, only summer guests, rather remotely and much elderly than I was. So I spent a lot of time with all the animals we had in our household, and also in nature. And when I came into the town of Stockholm, I was appalled by the state of the environment in the city. So my answer to that question is nature and all its life forms and the web of life. I have been much more concerned and in love and in awe about that than I have been and am when it comes to all the things we do as humans. There are very few things that I am impressed by when it comes to how we construct societies, cities, laws, or anything. But also my upbringing was one of an abusive father and a fantastic mother that was really at an upbeat struggle, and I was the oldest of the siblings, so I kind of had to step in to protect them. And if there's anything I wish in my life is to have another childhood. But so that is also kind of something that fueled my anger towards the grown-ups in the world. Where are they when people need them? Where are society when children are suffering, and when we're killing the planet? Where are all the grown-ups? So that is kind of an anger I had with me all the way into Ericsson. And I am an engineer by training because my mom said that you're so inventive, Jonas, and if you have an engineering background, your life will be easy. So I got an engineering training. I felt it was very bad for my brain because my brain isn't square. It's kind of, it operates under different logic. And I worked as an engineer for several years, and then I got a master's in business administration, aiming for marketing, but ended up in long-term strategy scenarios stuff at Ericsson. And I went into Ericsson because I thought it was a bad company, disgraceful when it became, because in the 90s it had nothing to do in its vision and mission about nature or making the world better. All the mission and vision were about was to make their customers happy with the best technology. And I thought that was disgraceful. So that was my secret mission, and to change the vision of the company of Ericsson. I entered 1995 in the company. In 1998, I was in a position to rewrite the vision, but I had to rewrite the strategy as well, because that was the assignment that kind of gave me that opportunity. So I did that, and then I didn't really know what to do because I only had that idea in my head. So you could see I have been driven by anger in practice. But my passion has been nature. So that is still my question to you. Consider that. What is it that you're so passionate or so in love with? Because I don't think the key question is what is the problem with the world? I think the key question is who do you want to be, and what is worthwhile for you to spend your life doing? And that could be protecting your children, or it could be. So it was this colleague or schoolmate of mine that I spoke about the climate change and climate problems, and she zoomed out. And I asked her, "What do you think about when people talk about the climate?" And then she said, looked in me in the eyes and said that I think climate change is something for people to deal with that don't have 3 children that all want to commit suicide. And of course, we cannot expect everyone to follow our passion and what we want to protect. People have very different circumstances, and I think that is also why it's important to kind of connect to what we love, so that we don't spend our life fighting for someone else's passion, but our own, because we owe it to ourselves. But just a few years later, after I had helped the CEO, I was very fortunate to be in that position to help the CEO to rewrite the strategy, and that he selected me of everyone. But a few years later, we had Göran Jennevi, whom I think many of you have met, perhaps. I've been on a meditation, mindfulness / nature awareness thingy with him and a shaman in the archipelago of Stockholm. And what could it be, a few months later, he said that I have Oren Lyons, the faith keeper of Onondaga nations. So in European terms, he would be one of the leaders. He was in Stockholm, so Göran more or less suggested that I invited him home, so which I did. So I arranged, so we had a very good chef that cooked dinner for us, so we didn't have to think about that. My wife at that time, and the mother of my children, she was high-ranking executive at Ericsson at that time, so she could stay. And then we had Göran with us, who is mindfulness expert among other things, and the head of HR at that time in Ericsson, Marita Hellberg. So we were the dinner party. And I remember Oren teased me because I had this Eskimo kayak in the back of my house, made by canvas and small wood sticks. And he said, where these were built so you could take one seal on the front and one seal on the back and paddle home. Have you done that? So no. So perhaps it's not your kayak then. He was kind of a tough guy. History professor too. And he had this story. The purpose of the dinner in my mind was to talk about leadership, because they are the only indigenous nation in the US that haven't lost against the US Army. They still have their own land after at least 1,000 years, at least 1,000 years, or probably much longer than that. But that's so long the records go back. And Oren said, and his father said, that was only because they had good leaders. So I thought Ericsson, they would benefit of having good leaders. And it was really quick in the dinner to figure out that we can never copy that in Ericsson. They had an eye on the children from they were born, and then they mentored them all through their life, long after they became chiefs and clan mothers. And they were very, very skilled in bringing out the best of people. So really, really advanced. But he told me, or us, among other things, about the climate change, which was much worse than I thought, about the ecosystem collapse and lack of governance in the UN and in the nation states, which I didn't believe. I couldn't believe it was so bad, and I didn't want to believe it because of the consequences. And I was, of course, wondering, if this is true, how can I be a good parent while having to fight this problem? And he told us a story about he was invited to Davos Executive Committee. So they are not so well known. So they invited him. So he got a taxi or a limousine to drive him to a private jet that flew him then to Switzerland, and then another driver, and then he met this committee of old people, all men. And he, of course, didn't really know what they wanted him to speak about. But I don't remember how they started it, but they said, so you're all in charge of great multinational businesses. So imagine that all these businesses are like cars in a car race and all racing to win. It's just one problem. There is no finishing line. It's a mountain wall. And in a car race, you would have someone with a flag that could just stop all of you, keep your position, and then figure out another way to do to the trip. But you don't have that. So why are you still gassing, increasing your speed? And it was kind of an awkward conversation, and ended up with perhaps the oldest guy in the committee saying, well, we are responsible for the shareholders. So we really don't have any choice. And if we refuse, they will just replace us. And then Oren said, do you have any children? So, but yes, he had children. And do you have any grandchildren? And he had two. And Oren asked how old they were. And it so happened that Oren Lyon's grandchildren and his grandchildren were the same age. So they had this nice moment where they thought about their grandchildren until Oren asked, at what moment do you cease to be grandfather? And when I've been campaigning for Ecocide law, I've had that comment a few times. So I agree with you, Jonas, we should have this law. I agree with you as a person, but not as the head of marketing for this company. I cannot take that position. And I kind of figure, also I have this question from Oren with me, that it is curious that we can have one set of logic and personality in the breakfast table, another when we do the big business decisions that will impact everyone. And I think if there's one journey we should do as humans is to take away that division, so that we at least die as a whole human being. So that kind of was one of the things that he said. It was, the dinner was full of stories like that. So I spent a year to try to prove him wrong, and then failing miserably. But I spent a lot of time reading up on it.
Sorry, Jonas, but because you were still, we're still now at the end of the 90s, right? And you were still at Ericsson, and you were really thinking about the future and looking hard and gathering information and data. And this hadn't really showed up on your radar until you met him, and then you could not debunk what he was saying. It was just confirming what he was saying, right?
Yeah, no, correct. And I had this. I weren't in charge of strategy, but I was in charge of business environment analysis or business intelligence at Ericsson. So I had rather big muscles in my job. Met all kinds of experts and had all kinds of trends and research, but that didn't show up there either. So I had so it was early days. And when I met sustainability experts, they could say, well, climate change, it's not a new thing. We have many other problems like poverty and other things. Just one of all the issues. And I said, well, hang on. I remember Telbar Foundation that, gathers business leaders and experts. They also said that. So it's one of many things. Why should we talk about climate change? We could talk about imperialism or something instead. Well. And I said, I remember saying that, well, you talk about climate change, it makes all the other issues worse, faster. So if you don't deal with this, that is, systemic accelerator, you will for sure fail. And a lot of these experts, if you're an expert, it could go to your head, and then it limits your vision. So you don't see how things are connected. And when new data comes, you miss you missed the picture. So it was really frustrating early days with this, and yeah, it was. But emotionally, I was in a state of panic. One of my daughters was 1 year old, and another 2.5 years old. And I think 2 or 3 years later, I was still in panic, and my wife, told me that, or actually the kindergarten staff said that my youngest daughter, she comes in the middle of summer with what do you call it, stövlar, shoes for water.
Yeah, boots.
Yeah, high boots. And when they asked her why, she said that, well, the water will come. And my wife said to me that you tell the children more things than they can deal with. They have no need to know all these things. So so I have kind of quite a big respect for all these climate scientists and environmental scientists, the inner struggle they have, because I've had it for perhaps 10 years. And then I was looking for systemic things. So I worked with, you could say I worked with circular economy. I worked with trying to change companies so that it would be less damaging, mostly that. Reduce the climate impact or reduce their environmental impact or material consumption, and then be still more competitive. But it is kind of pointless in a way, because it will not change the direction of the current or the trajectory of the world. So I was still in kind of bad inner shape. And then I came across this systemic intervention of Ecocide 10 years later. So I worked with it for 10 years until the January this year, basically. Ecocide law, and I don't know how many of you have come across it. So
assume that no one has.
Okay.
Maybe someone has. You can raise your hand if you have, but.
Okay. So briefly, what it is. So eco comes from home, the Greek word home. So economy is managing the resources of the home. That's what it basically means. And in the Greek times, it was the household, and then Adam Smith, he made it to national economy, and of course we're in a global connected economy now. And side is the same ending as homicide, so that you kill, or you lay waste to our shared home, which is the planet. So that is not a crime. If you're a Spanish company, for instance, you could do big things, big dangers and bad things in the Amazon. But since you're based in Madrid, it's lawful. Or you could be the head of environment in Japan and say, in Japan, and for all the whalers in Japan, it's allowed to kill as many whales as you want. Doesn't matter if the International Court of Justice says it's a crime, and it's a crime in Australia and many other places. So Japan, they do whatever they want, and it comes from a peace treaty after the 30th year war in the 1600, that each nation state should be allowed to do what they want and not be interfered with. So the Peace of Versailles, I believe it is. So in the 1972, the first UN conference on the environment in Stockholm, the Stockholm conference, all these problems were known. Climate change were pretty well known. That the youth, which would be us and our parents, perhaps, they were losing their faith in the future already. That was known, and the environmental damage was known. So the word ecocide came about there. But because of this idea that the nation state should be sovereign and not be interfered and tampered with from outside forces, these systemic problems of our degradation of the planet as a whole was not included in the Rome Statute. It regulates war crimes mostly. So the Rome Statute, the idea to put ecocide law into the Rome Statute, which is a governing document of the International Criminal Court, came about in the 70s and then in the 90s, when it was really shaped. It was about, but it was voted out by 5 oil nations with an unfair voting process. But the Rome Statute is a really interesting thing. I won't go through all the details of it, but in the Rome Statute today, there are 4 crimes against peace. Genocide. So if you commit genocide, then put your feet on another, for instance, in Chile, you commit genocide in Chile like Pinochet does, and then he flies over to the UK. The UK have signed the Rome Statute, so that means that he could be tried and convicted for genocide in Chile, although Chile hasn't signed it, which happened also. There are crimes against humanity, which is similar, war crimes and crimes of aggression, which is what the Russia did now for, among other things, for against Ukraine, so that you invade a sovereign country. So the missing piece would be killing the planet, which I would say is delayed genocide, and killing all kinds of other species. So it's a really powerful document. So if you put a crime there, so for instance, genocide is there. That means that if you have a business plan and the corporate law doesn't include genocide, doesn't matter, because this umbrella law includes genocide. If you have a transatlantic trade agreement, you don't need to mention genocide because genocide is already mentioned in the Rome Statute. So if you put in then a crime, so making it a crime to destroy nature and the habitats big enough, so meeting all the thresholds, there are big thresholds that we can envision. It supersedes all law, basically all around the world. It's an umbrella law. So it changes the rules of the game, because all the business and financial transactions are dependent on law. That is what makes them work, among other things. But so changing the law, it also changes the norms. So it's really powerful. And what happened was, so 10 years ago, a very skilled lawyer called Polly Higgins realized this by herself. Nature needs a good lawyer, and nature needs a really good umbrella law. Where should we put that? We should of course put it in the Rome Statute, because that's criminal law. It's not civil law like the International Court of Justice. The International Court of Justice makes only legal opinion, which is basically paperwork. But if you have a criminal law, then that shifts all these papers and voluntary conventions into gear, so that they inform what should be ecocide even further and what should not be tolerated. So that pulls the net together, you could say. And we were campaigning, myself, Polly, Pelatil, another person, mostly us in Sweden, and then Polly set up an organization across the world, or started it, and we continue the Swedish track. It's a long story, all the things that we've done, but just to mention, she died very suddenly, and her successor in the UK, Jojo Mehta, were then in charge of the international organization and made a fantastic job at it. And we got Greta Thunberg to divert some of the funding she got for one of the awards to fund the international legal expert team, international drafting panel, we call them, and they all being professionals in how the International Criminal Court works and the Rome Statute, and prosecuting and being judges and things. With that legal document as a base, they recrafted her idea of the definition, and they were quite well known, many of these individuals. So overnight, with their definition, discussion, really took off. And one of the things I did was making rather thorough reports explaining, with ecocide law in place, how will that impact the world economy? How will that impact and speed up transition towards renewables and away from climate change? how will AI and Ecocide law, each reinforce each other to shift the rules of the game faster? And we got experts in the US to write about human rights and how human rights will be supported by Ecocide law. And with that, we got over, I think we have 500 scientists behind it. And these reports and the conversations, they took off in ways also. So, for instance, which is kind of interesting, my co-writer, a professor in the Iceland, she got Ukraine to realize the depth of it, and the Ukraine then talked with the Prime Minister of Sweden, which then was used when the European Union were discussing if they should include Ecocide law into the European Criminal Code, which they did, because one of the reasons was because the Prime Minister, the conservative Prime Minister of Sweden, is behind it. And now the entire Parliament of Sweden is behind Ecocide law. The entire European Union is behind it, and the conversations are far gone for the UN and the Criminal Court to put it into international or global law. So it's but I should say one thing, if to keep it short. Also, the idea is to only so that it only will address the worst crimes. So basically, for instance, there is this gold mine upriver in the Amazon in Ecuador. It has a tailing stamp for all the poisons from the gold mining. It's made by a Chinese company so poorly so that it's not even allowed in China. And it's earthquake prone. When that dam will break, it will pollute and create a tsunami that is a 30 or 40 or 50 meter high tsunami wave that travels from the west coast of the Amazon all the way into the sea in the east coast, some 600 kilometers away, polluting the entire Amazon River. So that would be an Ecocide law. So that if you're responsible then for that in the ministry or in the mining operations of it, it's very likely that you would be prosecuted and you would never get out of jail unless you fix it. So, and the definition is written so that it's enough that it's a substantial likelihood, but it will be crimes that happens from the time of signing and forward. However, it will impact investments because you need many years for an investment to pay off. So all coming investments then will be, all sensible people will stop their investment if they risk being prosecuted for Ecocide law. So it's really a powerful thing. And the more you would read up on the impact of law and transformative law, the more you will see that it is a missing link. And there's a lot of things that you could say about it. But so when I was starting working with Ecocide law, I kind of felt that I found my thing. It protects what I love, which is the living web of the world, and I have something to do. And I think that is kind of one of the lessons I had. So that if you activate yourself to do things in service of something that is worthy of your love, you get peace of mind while doing it. So I have a sense that I've been speaking for 20 minutes or more. So I think perhaps I'll try to stop. I'll try to stop here unless.
Thank you, Jonas. And I wouldn't mind you going on for another hour, actually. But some reflections from me, and then we can, of course, the rest of the audience here can, and I hope they will chime in as well. But I love the fact that when you were speaking now about this dam at the gold mine, sort of like you did not say if it fails, you said when it fails. And also, I have a question to you about your ending words here. The Japanese have a specific word called ikigai. I'm sure you heard about it, maybe. And it's a lens through which you can view your life when it comes to sort of like 4 aspects, which is sort of like doing stuff that you're good at, doing stuff that you like to do, doing stuff that you get paid for, and doing stuff that the world needs. And when you find all 4 of them, basically it's kind of like your purpose, or maybe even the why you were set to this earth, I guess. So it sounds like this is your ikigai then. Or
yeah, apart from the fact I wasn't paid really for it.
Yeah.
But yes.
But hopefully at least you have some kind of business model around it also, with consulting, and maybe so that you can get at least some way to live from it. But I just want to ask, maybe on a personal level, are you still driven or fueled by anger, or have you found another, I don't know,
driving force
approach? Yes.
Yeah. No, I don't think so. I don't think I have in the Ecocide campaign or project or whatever we should call it, or work with this idea, is I was surrounded with very angry environmentalists, typically without business background, which made me study psychology, by the way, because I was kind of I was, how should I say, very intrigued by how ineffective it was, when they were angry at everything and everyone. So I guess my anger wasn't really about that. So I wasn't in the way like that. But I had to take on the position of being the voice of reason and the voice of business towards them and towards business. And I quickly realized that we need to have everyone with us. And the beauty of the idea is, of course, that it doesn't make enemy of people. So everyone is invited to rethink and redirect their innovation. And it's just if they don't, then they can get a problem. So I realized I want to have the mining industry as friends. And I want to have the oil companies as friends. I don't want to scare them too much either. And so on and so forth. So if it did anything, working with this, since I was in service of life in a sense, really, it forced me to be very humble and calm down in another way. When I was in Ericsson, I did transcendental meditation twice a day for many, many years. And then I stopped actually when my children were born for strange reasons, I guess. But I had a peace of mind already, but it's kind of another peace of mind, when you are in sync with your heart and your mind, so that the heart, in a sense, tells your mind to get in line.
Yes. So, do we have any questions here from us?
Geraldo is typing, and I don't know if he wants to ask a question.
Typing here. Anger is good, Jonas.
Sorry?
Anger is good. It's a good thing.
Anger is good.
Anger is good, yes. It is, how to say, well, all leaders like Martin Luther King, you name it, they were, how to say, they had a lot of anger inside, but they managed to how to say, to cope that in a good way, right? But it's a really good motivation. So I put here in the chat just a beautiful blog post on that I believe is inspiring. Like you, Martin Luther King was, how to say, driven by a certain dose of anger. So.
Yeah.
Jonas, I wonder, at that first Davos meeting with this Göran, right, was attending, when he asked that question, sort of like, when did you start being a grandfather? Was it something that clicked with people, or did they get defensive? I understand it was very, very awkward, but sort of like, it wasn't solving anything.
No, it was an awkward moment. And then after a while, the silence were broken by someone that said, well, you're an Indigenous leader. don't you have perhaps a prophecy you could share with us? And so that was how they broke it. And then he said, he's funny, but he said that I can do better than that. I can give you a prediction with 100% certainty. Yeah, we would like to hear that. So when you meet here again in a year, nothing will have changed.
Yeah.
And then he took his bag and went. Yeah, but we're victim of a system. So it's kind of, in a sense, not their fault. Of course, you could get upset with they being smug about it, how successful they are while the business is killing the world. So it could be but they were right also. So if they would just stop or do something different, they would just be replaced. And someone talked about this monster. The monster will continue.
Yeah, and it's like this whole mechanism that we have touched upon also in this context earlier about the Moloch machinery or mechanism, right? That kicks into gear, and but I like this eco-law or ecocide thinking because it was just actually not even a year ago that I actually learned the true meaning of anarchy. And anarchy means no hierarchy. So the world is actually an anarchy because no state can govern another state. Hence, sort of like this whole thinking around that they should be able to decide for themselves and all that stuff. But of course, you have instead sort of like it's the law of the jungle as well, right? And where the powerful dominates the weak, and the weak has to sort of like just try to position themselves in the best way possible if they can. But it's basically a grab for all. So it's good that you have this international criminal court system in place. Of course, hated by Russia now and previously as well, because they want to be truly sovereign, because they think they deserve it, because they are strong and powerful. So but it's basically the only governing mechanism we have, because maybe there are other structures in place, but they are not really helpful when it comes to these big players that still basically can do what they want.
So but you have law. So you can have a democratic, but it's not only a solution, of course. It's absolutely not. But for like 10 or 15 or so years, there was this big idea to have a world government, which is really dangerous because you will have either a senile person being in charge of it or a crazy person eventually.
Yeah.
Just like, So, but you can have law. So and nature has laws, in fact. So you can just mimic it.
Yeah, that's right.
I see we have some hands.
Yes, and I will start with mine. Thank you very much, Jonas. It's always great to hear you, and also the podcast that you shared with us before to be prepared for the session. And it's I have a kind of a doubt on how can we make sustainable long-term change in our environment. And definitely going through the path that you've done, the law. It's a very powerful one. I was very lucky to be one of the drivers of SOX legislation in Ericsson when it was some years back. And the very first image that we used was when the Enron executive team went to jail. It was our first image. And then suddenly we had perfect attention from the whole executive team in whatever local company that we were going to. So probably that would be a very good incentive if you have not company level accountability, but individual decision-making level accountability. That was, I think, the key driver. Do you think that with changes that like this can happen, or do we need to do something different with the private part of the sector?
No, I think okay. So I can answer this question in many ways. I'll give you the quick and easy answer first. So you have a with Ecocide law, you get a very big mesh network or safety net or a safety rail, which and it's already being refined. So it's more fine-tuned, not in Ecocide law, but through European law and international law. So already that is turning into becoming dangerous even for smaller crimes in Europe since this, and it's really interesting, the development. But the big thing was then to shift the norms and show that this is possible. So you have such a, and I think it's really important. But and I think you're right. It has to be on the individual, so that the innovation is really turned around or redirected. We need everyone's innovation, but we don't need it in a way that destroys us. But there's another way to answer your question, and that is by returning, what do you want to sustain if you have long-term change? What is worthy to sustain? And I think it's a serious question because a lot of the things we do doesn't deserve to accompany us to the future. So I think, how should I say? So one of the things I'm doing with my wife is planting oak trees and different food trees in a way that works with nature, so that you have food that will be generated for perhaps 1,500 years into the future in ways that will be, helpful for future people. So there's so many answers on what kind of change and what kind of long-term change, and it comes back, I think, to the question of to what you love and what you want to deal with in your life. And I think also an important aspect is that we aren't supposed to carry all the world on our shoulders. There are many of us. So I think that is kind of another way to kind of answer. But I think you're right. I think individual responsibility is really important. But there are so many things, and you're into folkbildning, which is another thing that is no regret strategies. As long as that is something that you want to deal with or to spend your days doing.
Thank
Geraldo.
you, Jonas.
Yes, Jonas, I have two questions, and one of them is more like a doubt.
Yes.
Okay. First thing, I mean, I think you had already left the company, but I mean, it's like I am so, how to say, inspired by this with law. And like you said, it's not only nudging, but really doing something, right? And preventing things. Because I remember back in the 2000, I mean, a lot of activists thought, no, but it's just volcano activities, Geraldo. It's no issue. Just volcano.
What is it? No,
it's just
can do.
Yeah, it's just volcano.
What is it?
Activity.
Volcano.
Volcano activity. There is no other studies that we did at that time. I remember one study that the conclusion that yes, there is impact climate change, but it's going to take 100 years, which is the executive that is interested, something that's so long term at that time, right? But anyhow, then as much as I'm impressed, the example that you gave with China's gold mine in the Amazon.
Yes.
They are not, as I understand, in the ICC, right, as part. And then if something happens in the Amazon that destroys the whole Amazon, my gosh, then it's too late still, right?
Yes.
So this is the first, almost like I said, a doubt, or how do we deal with that? Because it's so big, and at the same time, too little, too late. And then the other question I have that is so important, I think, for our group is that we're really trying to find ways that nudge the system big time, like laws is a big insight for me. And then little things that we can do, like planting potatoes, as I mentioned, it was our last 4Ds. So what is cooking in your mind now that you have so successfully put Ecocide into place? What are other possible avenues for change that can nudge the system big time, or at least nudge? So two questions. Sorry for being long-winded.
No. And I'll try to be rather quick if I can, but it's a big question. So, but on your doubt first, so it's very good that you voice it. And it's tempting for me to read the definition, but it will take many minutes, and you could do it yourself. But it's really well written, and so if you read the definition, you will see that a substantial likelihood is enough for it to be qualified as a crime, and but it needs to have an act. Someone needs to be, able to held account that has a principal part of it. So we are not all criminals for climate change, although we might fly and drive cars, because we have not such a significant impact on climate change as an oil CEO, for instance, that extract oil, say in the Amazon. And also it needs to be disproportional to the damage, the benefit. So if the money is concentrated in Spain or in the US for environmental degradation that happens somewhere else, that is aggravating fact. So it's really well written definition that is also tougher as time goes on. So when we have new technology, the definition will be tougher because of how it's written. And another part of the answer is, in contrast to war crimes, genocide, when you usually have a warlord and you have a state of mind that is not easily deterred, you will, and you have an inclination to stay in your nation. That is not the case when it comes to economic activity, which is actually fueling the destruction of the planet. So you have investment companies that is already talking about not honoring any insurances that is near Ecocide law. And of course, when it's a done deal, you are uninsured. You have executives that travel across the world and their families, so they are exposed to being arrested. You have the banks, of course, that is already very worried about what the European Union is doing when it comes to this. So Ecocide law is a million times worse if they would be anywhere close to it. And you have the materials. So say Stockholm want to build a new golden bridge. That would be very troublesome if they buy it and fund mining activity that is Ecocide law somewhere else, and then that is transported here. So we are bound together in ways that even if China isn't a signatory state to Ecocide law, they have to be very, very careful to contain everything they do within China. All the funding, I think you can figure it out yourself. So it's a fantastic, simple idea, right into the bullseye. So, and I've written at length about it.
Jonas, this clarifies a lot. So I wrote here in the chat, in some ways it's even tougher than war crimes because it's preventive. Yeah. Very good. Very good. I had missed that definition. Thanks.
No, it's easy to miss when, for what is it, 8 years, we tried to get the Swedish government to support this and say that this is good for your legacy, dear friends. The prime minister, was the first to mention it in Sweden, in Stockholm, and you should, take on the heritage and be remembered and all that. And they said, well, it could weaken the International Criminal Court with such a, massive and flood of cases, and they're not able to deal with it. So that's why they didn't want to support until Ukraine came. And when I spoke with them, with the lawyers and attorneys in The Hague, where the criminal court is, they say that's nonsense. The International Criminal Court is poorly equipped to work with the crimes that is already there, but we're perfectly equipped for ecocide law. It's so much easier, and you don't have nuclear powers, engaged in ways that that makes it impossible for us to prosecute them. So you're not alone. It's really, but it's a big question, big topic. I could speak, hours or days. Actually, I have material for weeks of education. so it's and then you were into what is meaningful to nudge, seriously nudge or shift the system. And the idea. So I think Donella Meadows' latter of influence or system change is rather good. So the most powerful, amongst the most powerful things you could do is help or influence people's worldviews, and you could do that with humor too. So that's so you could say we have a very anthropocentric worldview. Everything we have organized, all the nation states, all the laws, basically everything is about us and our needs and our rights as humans. And we've forgotten our relation, our utter dependence on the living world. So that's why I kind of like this idea with an embassy for the Baltic Sea that represents the Baltic life forms in negotiations with the Baltic Sea states. Because that begs the question, why are all the embassies only for human needs? Now, how sustainable is that? And in the future state, 100 years from now, or 500 years, or 1,000 years from now, will we really have embassies that ignore all the life forms that is not only supporting us, but many of them inside us and actively supporting us? So it's kind of a play with the worldview, but it's also connected to law. So we could have fun with it. So that's and also one thing that's interesting with the water, and it's that's important in itself. But you could say the Baltic Sea doesn't start by the shorelines. It starts in Norway along with the fjords and the groundwater that goes in and pollutes and upsets the Baltic Sea. And the land needs us people to take care of it. And the land is also a very good place for reconciliation and working for really tangible, important things that involves your neighbors, that you have been where many of us are estranged to them because we're so much into the technologies and things. So that's I kind of, but I'm actually in an argument now with my co-founder Pelatil, because she wants to do it in another way than I want to do. So I will be probably sharing her on and wait for something else to do, and then just wishing her luck, because I want to have a strategy that I believe in to do it, and she, as do she, and she has a different view, and she's brilliant. So, but it's a good example, I think. Still, with you could include folk building, and it could be, and you could say things that shift the perspective from tangible things to relations, I think, is also a winner. So, and that could also be something for you to consider. Now, do we need another MOOC, or do we need to reconnect those that exist so they are more powerful and actually not in competition? But playing with relations could be fun. Yeah, I'll stop there. I'll try to be brief.
Johan.
Yes, thank you, Jonas. Such an interesting and useful approach to use law. So when I learned, I need to learn a lot about that. But there's two aspects of this that comes to mind, and I will try to frame them in a fairly quick way. I mean, one of the root causes of this predicament seems to be, in order to drive this civilization ahead, we need to have natural resources. And let's take mining, we need minerals, and let's take oil and fossil hydrocarbons. We need that, not only for fuel, but also for, the Haber-Bosch process and whatever, right? So we need those things. And when we extract that, we impact the environment, right? For sort of that's part of the process almost. And of course, you can minimize that impact, but that will have come at a larger and larger cost, right? Which we have been able as society to externalize, right? So that cost is not ours to take, right? So we don't need to have that in our balance sheet as a company or whatever. And now with this putting this into the criminal law is a great way to make it harder to externalize those costs, right? How much more expensive will it be if we successfully internalize all those costs? That's one observation I have, right? I think it will be tremendously expensive, and that needs a different change anyway, right? So even if this is tremendously successful with the law approach, we need to change something more, otherwise it will be even worse in another case. The other question / observation is, I understand that the accountability in the lawmaking is on the executive base. Sort of, that's the prime target. If you're the CEO of a company that is creating Ecocide, you will go to jail, basically.
No, it's not entirely, but yes.
Because there's at least 3 other groups that are equally accountable, I would argue. One is the employees of the companies, right? That didn't say no. Sort of the other are the boards and the owners of the company, the shareholders, which in the Swedish case means, we are all owners of all these companies because we are part of the pension funds, right? So we're all going to jail as individuals, aren't we? And the third is the user of the products of those companies, right? And is that also being criminalized, or should it be, or can it be?
No, not. Let's see. You had 2 questions, I think. You had the question of cost, and then also okay. So I'll start with the last one, which is the most complicated. So the International Criminal Court, they have had a lot of training of finding those in superior responsibility. So they have a lot of training in it. So it isn't necessarily the board or the CEO, but you need to have knowledge about it, or something that is really likely that you really knew about it. And one aggravating fact then would be if you collect a lot of money from it. So if you have an oil company in Africa mining for oil that is owned, or a gold mine that is owned by the local population, that is not as easy to prosecute as if you have Royal Dutch Shell that mines somewhere totally different, and it would be more aggravating if the profit is lands in fewer pockets, and the banking system is nervous about it. So they have a lot of training of finding those with superior responsibility, and that on an individual level have had the power to intervene, change, or should have known better. And it would be aggravating, of course, if there's a lot of demonstrations where they're accused of ecocide law and then they ignore it. So the power of demonstrations is raised. I know several of the experts, if not all the experts, have been very vocal about how this works. So we have Kate McIntosh, for instance, and Richard Rogers. Both have been in podcasts detailing this in good ways. And usually, in as a corporate executive or a board member, you could rely on the corporate resources to have insurances that cover the costs and problems, and also lawyers. But that will be most likely forbidden to do. So you're out there alone. So which is discouraging, I would say, for those involved. And there was this 1,000 executives met, and in France they had this democratic process where Macron paid random citizens to be part of the decision process of where France were going, and those demanded presentations of ecocide law, and in that, so it was a series of presentations, and one of them there was 1,000 executives also listening to this, and when the speaker said, well, when your board says you have to do this mining or this operation, although you know it's wrong, you can now say with Ecocide law that you can fire me, but the next CEO will also refuse. He don't want to go, she don't want to go to jail either. And she got standing ovations from that. So we're all trapped. So, there is also this very good book I would recommend, how tough it is for heads of state and ministers to say no when it comes to this. I'll put it in the chat, but you could, if you would mind to read that book, you could just figure out how much easier it would be if they could rely on the law and say like that. Imagine CEO. It's really tough as an individual for the moment with this law lacking, and it will be more expensive. I've avoided to put the number of it. I have it in. I have all the conversation about it in Ecocide law and economy within planetary boundary report, but I avoided to put number on it. But I think it's not so difficult. But if the more you mimic nature, the more the better the economy would be, and you wouldn't destroy the natural capital. You would work with the dividends and have multiple revenue streams if you then would be in a monetary system. But I think over time we will be in another system. Okay, I hope that was okay as an answer.
Thank you. Kasi?
Yeah, I have a couple of comments I have included in the chat, and then one question. The comments are, first of all, the other day I watched a very interesting Last Week Tonight, and it was about deep sea mining. And it talked a lot about the problem of no owner or jurisdiction. I mean, there's an agency from the UN, but it has very weak powers to really stop deep sea mining in international waters. So it's very linked with what you were saying, for example, about the Baltic Sea, about having a legal statute or legal something to defend its own rights one way or another. The second thing that came into my mind, as another comment, it's now to minimize the risk for money laundering and terrorism and things like that, banks have a new regulation, which is know your customer. Know your customer, it's about understanding where the money comes from when you have a new customer. It would be interesting, perhaps not short-term, but mid-term, if these two could be connected, the know your customer and Ecocide law, if we could, in a way, future thinking to connect them as well as not only knowing your customer from terrorism and money laundering perspective, but also is the money coming from illegal or operations that should be connected with Ecocide law or something like that. That could be a good way forward. Yes. And that brings to my real question. The real question, Johan loves to talk about these things, about complex systems. We definitely are in front of a complex system with things that are connected with each other, and when you do one change, perhaps another happens. We probably can take and make decisions from legal system, from companies and corporate governance system, from customers system, from people, we users as citizens. So how do we put all this, what you're doing, within a complex system of improving the world as we know it, the trend that it's taking towards getting worse and worse? What other things can we do apart from the legal side, or what can we connect that with other players and agents?
That is a big question. I think it would be interesting, I think, with a session like this where we only explore that. We could take different aspects. You could discuss local currencies, and you could have democratization of assets, like land assets. You could have rights of nature, which is really interesting as well. You could have folk building, and you could, there's some. If you just mention, go through all the fantastic things that are powerful, just go through those as a list. It's difficult not to be hopeful. So there's so many connections. I made a little. Sorry.
That's so nice to hear. It's difficult not to be hopeful.
Yeah, there's so many things, so we don't read about them, and they're powerful, and many things I think will carry us. There's also this aspect with words themselves. So, okay, this is difficult in English. It's not my native language, but many of the words we have kind of keep us thinking within the system in ways which is interesting. So in Swedish we have this word utmanad, and we also have
challenged, basically.
Challenged, but utmanad. But in Swedish it means that something forces you out, from your sofa and out into the real world to do some things. And when we think about assets, we typically think about money in a bank account, which is not asset really. Assets are relations more. So if things go really bad, and that is also the experience, across the world, perhaps not always, but everywhere I've listened into, people are surprised how helpful their neighbors and their friends and everyone around them, not their friends, are. So when we are facing atrocities and bad things, if it's possible, we have a tendency to help, not to get in each other's ways, but really to chip in and help. And I think the challenges will have as a side effect this reorientation about what is really assets, what is really our strength, and I think we will realize that they wake us up. They will get us out of our delusions and our closed, depressive, life into something else. And then I think, in that state of mind, it doesn't matter so much if we lose a lot of the modernity luxuries. I don't think we will miss them. It will be a good riddance.
Maybe on a ending word here, we're trying to sum things up. Just like to delve a little bit into your thoughts on circular economy as maybe a necessary tool and approach, but also that tied to the maybe overarching subject of growth, where the way I perceive, in a very generic, simplified way, that the world seems to have these opposite or polarized spectrum of sort of like growth and degrowth, basically. And yes. Is there a middle road there, or some third dimension into that?
Yeah, it's I think the questions are unfair for me to answer them only, and it should be discussion. But I could give you my, for what it's worth, my views on it. So I think the issue with growth, to start with, is an issue of managing the change and perspective. So I've been talking a lot about the Ecocide law. It doesn't help with the inequalities. And for those of you who read Jared Diamond, I think the book Collapse, where he looked at, I think, 31 societies, and then compared, for instance, the collapse of Easter Island with the non-collapse of Japan, society in Japan. The difference, he says, and one of the conclusions is that the isolation from the effect prevented in Easter Island, in many other places, and I think in our world as well. So that those that are in most power, they don't feel the effects, and they think they could get insulated from them, so that they aren't motivated enough to shift the system. And I think that it's embedded in growth. So with growth, those that are already in power, they are enticed to stay with status quo. And the real thing with degrowth is to rearrange that. But it is difficult, I think, with that rhetoric of degrowth to get support or buy-in for the idea to do that. I think it should be I think unfortunately we need to split it up in different discussions at different times, so that we don't talk about the revolution in nice words, which is degrowth, what it is about. Now, how would we get there? But I think so Ecocide law doesn't fix this inequality problem. It just shifts the direction of innovation, buys us time, and it's something that is useful in the future to have such a law, but hopefully it's not needed in the future. It will be evident. So I think the real issue for me is how to shift the economic incentives so it's not perverse and killing us all. So that is one thing, and I think with circular economy, I've been working with it for 10 years and implementing it and so on. I think for me, circular economy, it's not about equality, not about social justice so much as, in a sense with Ecocide law, it buys us time and points us into a better direction, how to actually do it. Ecocide law says you have to stop this or you will be jailed. Circular economy talks about how to do it, but it could still be that we all have to rent everything from Wallenberg. And if we fail with the rent of a telephone, we will get evicted from our house and everything else. So we could be in a horrible situation with the circular economy, in this type of growth system where I hear also that the assets, or if you have a loan in the bank, they could claim everything with the new laws that are being discussed, where the bank could, if they get into problems, all their loan customers could get, it's random who gets to pay the entire bill. But I think we have so much to learn when it comes to circular economy. Just look at the tree. You could look at it as a piece of wood, of course. But if you imagine that we would like to design a tree that is roughly equivalent to a tree that is, that the Indigenous talked about as the standing nations, we would need to do something that produces oxygen, binds carbon, sequesters carbon, fixates nitrogen in the soil. Nitrogen is a really small atomic particle, distills water, collects sun energy as fuel, for instance, or energy for other life forms, creates complex foods like sugar, creates microclimates, changes color with the seasons, supporting the albedo effect, which is positive for the climate change, communicates with all other 5 life forms that exist, lies if it's threatened. So it could say that you have a invasion of ladybugs. It could say by sending out the smell, which then will scare the living daylights out of the spekel in Swedish, those insects that eat the leaves. So they can actually lie. They could say that it comes an invasion that doesn't come. They are home, could be home for over 1,000 species of life, a tree, and they are self-replicating. And by design, they are totally circular and free of waste. So this is just a tree. And I'm not talking about what they do to purify the land under and how they communicate with other life forms under the soil or in the sky. So going into a circular path where we try to mimic the principles of nature, we will not be poor, and we will not be bored either. And we have the best master. So I think circular economy is now open the gates, and circular economy, what you could argue, the weakness of it is it's all expressed in terms that makes it, sink in like the word of God, you could say, in a crazy mind, to put it badly. it makes really sense if you're trained economist, circular economy. You understand all the concept and you understand how you could grow when your competitors fail and how to shift the system and rethink Porter. So it's all done for an economist or a business leader, the narrative of circular economy from Ellen MacArthur Foundation. But behind it is mimicking nature, and that wouldn't come across unless it was covered, camouflaged by McKinsey and very familiar words. So don't mistake circular economy for a McKinsey, another McKinsey product. It's a liberating force. But it doesn't solve the inequality problem, and it doesn't solve the fundamental problem with growth that fuels the destruction of our home.
Thank
Does
you.
It make sense?
Yes, it does. And I think that was a great conclusion to this whole discussion. And also, it just opened my eyes to what an ingenious innovation a tree is, actually. I'll put more trees to my art. But with that, Jonas, I think.
Can I have one final thing, Peter, before we finish? Just one question, and it was a comment on from Herald as well in the chat. Jonas, can you give us 3 readings, podcasts, or resources that can help us to learn more from where you are?
Yes. Could I? Or perhaps I could mail that and then instead ask everyone to nudge me a little bit, and I could customize it for you.
Good. We do that.
So the nudging question, Casimiro and Peter, what would that be then? So I could, find in my mind what would be useful. How should we phrase it?
I guess reading or listening, that is, I think, at least for me, what is pertinent is getting those glimpses of what is actually, actionable things that you can do, and also these glimpses that actually gives us more hope in order that we are able to change things. But that's just my personal take on it.
Okay.
And just very briefly, I think, Johan, I'm looking at you. Those connections you can do so well, right? The connections of all these things that are going out there. But maybe it could be even a 4Ds on its own. As you mentioned, the connections that are giving hope. So, and Jonas, I'm thinking that you have been so generous with your time. The description of the tree, it's so good that we are recording that. I'm gonna steal with proud.
Yeah, please.
And I learned so much. I understand that we are the only thing between you and the barbecue, right?
Yes. Yeah, they are outside and barbecuing for me. They're making pancakes over the fire, I see.
Thank you so much. Let's continue the dialogue then. And then we have the nudging question, the literature, or how should you call, right? And yes, I think this is just a start for something really good, and a partnership with you, Jonas, as I have been nudging you. We want you to be part of this growing initiative.
Thank you for your kind words and having me. And I haven't been able to follow the chat. I've been so concentrated on trying to answer but perhaps I could get the chat afterwards.
Yes, absolutely. We send you the chat as well. Yes.
Yeah. And
okay.
I'll just say one thing. It was something that came up on the discussion before this meeting. In English, there's this word agency, as you were into, Peter. In Swedish, I believe the word is rådighet. And it's quite interesting. So what you're passionate about and what you could influence. But I would say that the world has magical properties. So that if there's something that you really want to, influence or, experience or help out with, it has a tendency to come your way. But rådighet is kind of so that you don't waste your life on things that you have very little impact on, because it's too valuable for that. So I just wanted to send that in. Bad closing remark perhaps, but just.
Thank you.
I'll send you some readings, and please return with suggestions to me.
Yes.
You have the mail in tomorrow perhaps.
Thank you, Jonas,
Absolutely.
and
Thank you.
Please forward our thanks to your wife that sort of like let us borrow you for this 1.5 hours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All the best. Have a great summer.
Thank you.
Same
Thanks.
to you. Thank you.
Great summer, everybody.
Take good care.
I stopped the
Björn.
recording.